Welcome to Atlanta Lawyers on the Move.
Welcome to Atlanta Lawyers on the Move. Atlanta lawyers are a community of support and encouragement. Today we're going to interview a successful and focused lawyer to learn more about them, their story, and their law practice. Who am I? My name is Pamela Deneuve, and I help focused and successful lawyers increase their profits, move their practice to the next level, and enjoy peak performance. Listen to our interview this week.
Hi, my name is Pamela Deneuve, and welcome to Atlanta Lawyers on the Move. Today, I'm very pleased and honored to have our guest, Lee Wallace. And let me tell you a little bit about Lee. Lee Wallace represents whistleblowers reporting fraud against the government and also handles plaintiffs' side catastrophic injury and product liability cases. She is a registered mediator with the State of Georgia Commission on Dispute Resolution and mediates at Bay Mediation. Lee is a past president of the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. Lee was first in her class at Vanderbilt University and was an honors graduate of Harvard Law School. After clerking on the U.S. 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, she began practice in Atlanta. Lee has been practicing more than 20 years, and in that time has worked on matters in 20 different states. In polling of 24,000 Georgia lawyers, Lee was named one of the top 100 lawyers in Georgia. She has been named a Georgia super lawyer every year since the poll began and has repeatedly been named one of the top 50 female lawyers and is one of the top 10 product liability lawyers in Georgia. Lee also has been asked to serve on the Blue Ribbon panel that evaluates lawyers for the Super Lawyer Award. Georgia Trend magazine has named Lee Wallace one of Georgia's legal elite. Lee chaired the product liability section of the Georgia State Bar. She has edited a book on medical negligence and published numerous articles on plaintiffs' personal injury issues. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you.
We're so glad to have you for Atlanta Lawyers on the Move. I'd like to ask you questions. Our questions, and the first one is, when and what made you decide to become a lawyer?
My grandmother told me when I was young, she said, you can be either a doctor or a lawyer. I don't care which, but you have to pick one of those two. And I really was scared of blood. So it was an easy choice that I would pick law. And really, I was sort of a natural, from a young age. I was really great at arguing. I loved, and I've always liked law and things like that. I was very nervous about becoming a lawyer. In fact, I thought I was disqualified because I had the same fear that they say is the number one fear of adults, which is the fear of speaking. And I thought lawyers had to speak all the time, and I was afraid to do that. So I took a class in college, a speech class. I took it pass fail because I thought, surely I can pass, but I might be right on the edge. And it turned out I loved public speaking. I ended up doing great in the class. I won a school speaking contest and won $100. And that led to me being on the debate team, and I won a debate tournament, first place individual speaker, and suddenly realized that what I thought was disqualifying me from being a lawyer actually was something I really enjoyed doing. And now it's one of my favorite things to speak to groups.
Well, that's really wonderful. You really went to excellent schools like Vanderbilt and Harvard and were at the top of your class. Was that something that was difficult, or you're just a natural student?
I think it would be a combination of things. I mean, obviously, my family background was like my grandmother, the one I mentioned earlier, was a middle school grammar teacher.
Oh,
And my grandfather was a principal, and schooling was incredibly important in my family. But I never, my modus operandi always was that I was going to work harder than anybody else all the time. And so I think that had a lot more to do with sort of the grades and so forth, is I just worked nonstop. I really believed in hard work.
oh, great. So then that was one of the things that your family imparted to you, which was the desire and the drive to work hard and
Yeah,
try to be the best at what you're doing.
definitely.
That's great. Well, you represent whistleblowers. Now, how did you get into that practice?
Well, I initially began representing plaintiffs in catastrophic injury and auto products cases, and had legal matters all over the country, 20 states. But a friend referred a whistleblower case to me. It's also called a key tam case. And I didn't know anything about that kind of law at the time I took my very first one. So I went to the law library and literally read treatises. I mean, multi-volume treatises, start at the beginning, first page, read to the end page. I read everything they had on whistleblower law. And there are three things that I really love about the practice. One is that it's intellectually very hard, and I find that really stimulating. Another thing is that you always feel like you're on the right side, because what you're trying to do is get back money that was taken from the government by fraud. And that just feels right. And then the third thing is I really love the clients. My very first client was a guy named Buster Rodriguez, who was a helicopter maintenance repair guy. And he had been shot down in a helicopter while he was serving in Vietnam. So now, fast forward, his son is serving in Iraq. So he took a job over there as a helicopter maintenance repair manager, because he wanted to make sure that any helicopter he touched wasn't going to go down like his had gone down. So, and he found out that the defense contractor he was working for was overbilling the government. They were billing for time that they were supposed to be paid just for the hours that their employees worked. But instead of doing that, they were telling people, here's your hour and a half for lunch, but they were starting the clock back up after just half an hour while nobody was back yet from lunch. And that wasn't how it was supposed to work. So because he was just the kind of guy who liked to do the right thing, he just assumed they would want to pay this money back, and he offered to help them do that. And they were, needless to say, not particularly excited about it. It's quite a story, in fact, what happened to him.
Lee, that sounds like a great story. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yes, my client, whose name was Buster, was working for a defense contractor in Iraq, and he had gone on vacation. On his way back in from his vacation, he stopped at the corporate headquarters in Dubai, and that's when he found out about the overbilling and told them, no problem, I can help you figure out how much it was. We can pay it back. It's, we'll work this out. Well, that apparently wasn't what anybody else wanted. So Buster heads into his site where he's worked for a couple of years now, and he is suddenly told that they no longer have a bed for him to sleep in. They pull some cot out, put him in a supply room, and he ends up, the next morning, they wake him up at the crack of dawn after he's been traveling for 24 hours to get there. And they wake him up and say, you're being transferred to another site and you have 24 hours to get there. They take him to a helipad, put him on a helicopter, but it flies over the site where he's supposed to report and into Baghdad. So there are no flights from Baghdad to where he's supposed to report. So they give him, he has no way to get there within the 24 hours, and he's supposed to report within that period of time. So he grabs a ride with a Blackwater patrol across Baghdad to a different airport that does have a flight into the place where he's going. But it is a harrowing journey across Baghdad because they come under fire. And the Jeep behind him is hit while they're in process of going across Baghdad. He finally makes it, flies in, makes it to the place in the nick of time within the 24-hour period to report. But when he gets there, they tell him they have no record of him having been transferred there, and they have no bed for him to sleep in. So he got the message that, he was no longer welcome at the company, and came back to the United States. And after that, I began representing him. He's just it's that kind of person, though. He just really wanted to do the right thing and believe that about everybody else too. And those are great people to represent.
Wow, what a story. I'm sure it was justice for you to represent him. So what do you enjoy about your practice? More, I mean, I know you enjoy working with the people. What else do you enjoy about it?
I really like how intellectually hard it is. I think that's a lot of fun. My egghead background, I really like that. And then I also like the fact that it's always learning something brand new. You're always learning an industry, something you would have no reason to know about were it not for you're doing this kind of case. How does the customs industry work? Or how does how do anesthesiologists bill Medicare? Things like that are just really fun to learn. I enjoy that a lot.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So what are your next career goals?
I'm going to be a mediator at Bay Mediation. This is something I've wanted to do since law school. When I was at Harvard, the mediation movement was just starting. And I took a negotiation workshop class. It's now a famous class. People go from all over the country to take this, practicing lawyers. But they also made it available for students. So I took this and I just absolutely loved it. And the professor told me that he gave me the highest grade in the class. And I took his mediation class also. The mediation class he wrote the book for. It was the first legal textbook on mediation, and it's still used in a lot of law schools, many editions later. But, and then I even did my third year paper. At Harvard, you had to do a third year paper, and I did mine on ADR. I just loved it. I thought it was really interesting, and it seemed inherently a better way to do things. If you could let people resolve their conflicts and work them out, as opposed to 12 strangers just announcing who wins and how much. It just seemed like a better way to do things. But if you're going to mediate, you really need experience, because it's not just about, techniques of, people getting along and how to move people toward resolution. A lot of it is about experience and knowing what are the pitfalls, what are the touch points in a case, so you can help people figure out what is the value of the case and how do we get this resolved and get it off the tables before it has to go to a trial and strangers make the decision about it. How do we keep the decision making in the hands of the people who have the case?
Interesting. Wow, that's really a nice segue in your career. So tell me, what advice do you have for anyone who is struggling or facing difficulties in their goals?
I have something specific that I advise women about, particularly ones newer in their careers, but really at any stage. I think women fall prey to what I call the A trap. Because in school, the way things work is you go to school, you get an assignment, you make an A on the assignment. You do that often enough, you get an A in the class. You do that often enough, you get promoted. You do that often enough, you go to a good school. And it's always, there are always assignments, and you just do that assignment, you get the grade, and you get the next thing you're reaching for. Well, the problem is, if you're used to that approach, when you come out of school, life isn't like that. You don't get an assignment that you can succeed on and make an A and then move, further your career. Your assignments are something you do that are almost, they're a part of your career, but they're separate in a way. Your career has to be managed differently. And no one's going to give you the assignments, go meet 5 people, go have lunch with these people, go, join this club. People don't give you those assignments. The assignments you get are just from your boss related to that job, but not your career. And it's really important that anyone, particularly women, I think, look up and think, okay, not just, what is this assignment? What do I need to get done? But look up and say, where is my career headed? Where do I want to be? And so that's even, although I've been practicing 30 years, that's what I'm doing now. I still want to do the whistleblower cases. I'm not going to stop that, but I also want to mediate. It's something I've wanted to do for many years now. And so, I'm trying to proactively say, what do I want to do as my next step?
Wow, that's really great, because a lot of people aren't asking those questions. They're just holding their heads down and they're enduring whatever situation they're in. So it sounds like you're very proactive, and you're recommending that women lawyers become more proactive with their careers.
Yes, very much so.
Mhm. So, as a peak performer, you super lawyer, you top lawyers in Georgia. So you really have exemplified being a peak performer. What legacy do you want to leave?
I would say that there are 3 things that I want to, the legacies that I'd like to leave. One is that I helped other women in their careers. And one of the things probably I've been proudest of in my whole career and enjoyed the most was being president of the Georgia Association for Women Lawyers. And when I was president, we were encountering the fact that a lot of women were really hitting the glass ceiling. Women had been in law school in sufficient numbers by then, like 50%, that they should have been a pretty decent percentage of the partners in law firms. But they were nowhere near the percentage that corresponded to how many were coming through in law school. And then we also saw that there was a greater pay disparity between women lawyers and men lawyers than there was in other types of industries, which seemed really odd. So we wanted to do something about that. We wanted to change that. And there were a couple of initiatives we did. One was a study called It's About Time that looked at some of the issues surrounding part-time work for women lawyers. And what we found was that part-time work meant 37 and a half hours a week. And that was part-time in the legal industry. And then there were a lot of things that came out of that we learned. And then we also started a leadership academy for women in the 7 to 10 year range of their careers, to help them move past that junior partner into the senior partner accomplishments. And that I was really passionate about, and still am very passionate about helping women in their careers. I also would like to be known as a peacemaker, as someone who helped people resolve their cases, to get those cases done and settled. I would love to be that, and look forward to that. And on the whistleblower cases, I want to leave a legacy of getting $100 million back for the government that was taken from it by fraud, back for taxpayers.
Wow, that is really amazing. That is really amazing. Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. When you talk about your initiatives for helping women lawyers, I can see how you're such an example, and how you have, been really in a leadership role as far as the legal community, of being one of the top lawyers and being proactive, and then the leadership with Gall, and to, not just be the president of Gall, but to start initiatives that would help women. And that's really wonderful, in addition to, you're practicing your law practice and all your other responsibilities. So I really take my hat off to you. Our final question on Atlanta Lawyers on the Move that we ask our lawyers is, name at least one thing that you do to handle stress.
I love to read. I read all the time, nonstop. I mean, from the time I get up till the time I go to bed. Part of it's for work, sure, but I also like to read for pleasure. And I like to read novels, things that are fun and frivolous and don't, not self-improvement stuff. I really like just fun escapism novels.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And just my final question is, being a lawyer and, really handling those most challenging cases, especially the whistleblower and now getting into mediation, what do you think is your motivator that keeps you seeking, seeking excellence?
It would be the fact that part of it is that's who I am and that's what I believe in. And so it's just something that you automatically do. I also believe strongly in business coaching and in the idea that a coach can help you perform and can keep you focused and keep you headed in the direction that you need to go. So it's somebody from the outside who can help you think through, just as I mentioned earlier about women needing to look up and think through their careers. This is somebody to help you remember that, focus on that, and help you maintain that push forward on your career.
That's really wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for being our guest on Atlanta Lawyers on the Move. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Atlanta Lawyers on the Move. We hope you'll join us again next week.